The issue that I'm going to talk about is school fees for public education. Parents are charged fees for everything for kids these days, and by the time my kids were in high school, I was being charged $300 or more per year per kid. One year the PTSA put this issue on the agenda and asked the principal to speak about it, and since generating extra funds is a function of PTA, we wanted to know the reason for these fees and if PTA might be able to help reduce them. Now this is an example of how the first rung of the ladder manifested. The principal told us that there are electives available that do not incur additional fees, and that we could just sign our kids up for those classes if we didn't have the money to contribute to the others. What he did not tell us is that there's only one class per semester per grade level that fits this description. The reason we invited the issue to the table is in hopes that we might be able to help find a common solution by working together. After all, that is what PTSA does, Parent Teacher Student Association. But instead, we were misled with information regarding alternatives already in place, so the scope of the problem was left unaddressed. There are rules about how PTA can help provide financial support. And in one school I worked in, we raised $60,000 and put in a new playground. And on another occasion, we raised $30,000 and put in a computer lab. PTA can make a huge difference. But this other school, the principal, it was his second year there, and he either didn't know that we were willing to help or was too busy to deal with us. And this is unfortunate because we wanted to help solve this particular issue. After all, electives are fun classes and they enrich education, and we all want our kids to have access to the best variety possible. But we chose a different battle that year based on the information that the principal provided. And this is where the issue got personal for me that very same year. And I started climbing the ladder as a lowly individual. What happened, and this is, I asked that my son be placed in classes without fees. And I was assured that he would be, but he wasn't. And I wasn't. I simply believed the person who told me that my son would be assigned to the classes without fees. And why wouldn't I? People believe what their school authorities tell them. And as the year came to the end, my son came home and told me that they weren't going to let him graduate with his class if I did not pay the school fees. Well, I didn't sign him up for these classes, and he didn't choose them. He was assigned to them. So I jumped on the ladder and climbed up, and I set up a meeting, a consultation, if you will, with the finance secretary. And I got there. She agreed to remove one fee for one class that my son transferred out of and never even took. Now this was a $75 charge, and if I would have just paid the bill, I doubt very seriously if I got reimbursed. So as I sat there, I continued to inquire about these charges, and I said, well, why does he have any charges at all? He was supposed to have the classes that don't have fees. And so then I was sent to the Dean of Student Affairs. And this is where I learned that there's only one class per semester, per grade level, without associated fees. And although my son requested these classes, as they were full, he was assigned to classes that did have fees. And she told me that I had to pay the fees or my son wasn't going to get his transcripts to be able to apply to college. And when I refused, she proceeded to instruct my son to get a job and pay the fees himself. I reminded her that at this point that this issue wasn't about who could afford to pay the fees. It was that I was misinformed and misled, and now that we're threatening to punish my son, I informed her that I intended to get an attorney at that point. So the very next day, I was invited to a conference with the principal, and when I came in, he assured me that most of the fees were removed or reduced, and that my son was going to be able to participate in all his graduation activities, that there would be no hold on his transcripts, and could I just pay $20 for the workbook fee that was on my bill. So I paid it, and falsely placated again, 3 weeks later, my son came home and told me he wasn't allowed to participate in senior day. He was called out in front of the entire school with some other kids and taken out of the participation because he owed school fees. So I went to the Board of Education to see what I could do about this. And I was really feeling the squeeze of powerlessness as one individual. And they were humiliating my son, and after they told me they had resolved the problem. And as it turned out, people there didn't like these people very much either, and I wasn't the only person who had the problem. So this particular authority figure from the Board of Education made certain that as I sat there that the fees were removed from my son's record. Problem solved. And I felt at that moment that I was afforded citizen power through the effort, the delegated effort of this individual from the Board of Education. But the fact of the matter is that I was just placated again. My son graduated and I moved out of the area with my daughter, so she didn't have to go to that school. And my problem was resolved, but the real issue is still there. And the sad part of the story is that it all started with the venue designed for empowering partnership between the school and the student and parent and teacher body. And the alarming part is that the PTA is a very well-established organization, and the citizens were offering to help find solutions for an issue that I later experienced, and the offer was rejected flat out. A classic case of leadership abuse. When authority figures refuse to cooperate, there is no solution. However, when organizations of citizens and authorities do share power to solve common problems, it's incredibly powerful and helpful for everyone, as is clearly demonstrated by my example of when the school leadership actively engaged with PTA. We were able to put in a new playground and a computer lab. And now group 3's question. How are power and resource differences expressed in research, and what can we do to remedy the differences? Resources and power differences that exist in participatory research are an unavoidable reality. This article suggests that researchers simply need to acknowledge the fact and take on the additional responsibilities that come with the territory. In the best case scenario, the roles of researcher and participant are equalized, but the fact is that the researcher is always going to be an outsider, and for this reason alone, the dynamic is changed. It's at the same time, a researcher knows or might know stuff that the participants don't, and it creates a sense of distrust or separation that even when the researcher is working side by side with the participants, the researcher just isn't one of them. So the truth is there's really nothing that can be done about that. The best way to handle it is to acknowledge it and to continue to act in cooperation. In other words, the best professionalism in this case is the best remedy. Behave with authenticity and keep doing the work and being the researcher, and engage for that purpose. And in this way, it's the only way to facilitate trust and forge the closest natural connection that the circumstances permit.